It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and John Daigle.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eatin' podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eatin' podcast presented by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, get to call games now. First cable game on television this year. It'll be Oregon State at Nevada Saturday night. Both teams run the crap out of the ball. Looking forward to that. That's how I like to roll as a former offensive lineman. You can check me out at Ross Tucker NFL. You want to see what beers I'm drinking, what the press box food is like at Nevada. Your guess is as good as mine. At Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod, and that's the way that you see the highlight clips of all of these shows, right? Fantasy Feast, Even Money, College Draft, Ross Tucker Football Podcast, even Andrew Brandt's Business of Sports. You can see the best of the best if you follow at Ross Tucker Pod on social media, or if you go ahead and follow us on YouTube, or even watch on YouTube, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. The star of this show is my new best friend, John Daigle. He's the man at NotJDaigle on social media. He's one of the owners over at EstablishTheRun.com, where you can take your football fantasy obsession or just loving information about pro football to the next level by using the code FEAST. Again, EstablishTheRun.com. As a reminder, we record both episodes on Wednesday. We drop one right away. The second one we drop after midnight Thursday morning, so we don't mess up your podcast app, however it is that you check us out. Which also means, John, that we don't really know who either quarterback will be in the Colts and the Titans. That doesn't happen very often. That's a new one. We don't really know who the quarterback will be for either team. Good luck breaking this one down, John.
I'm going to do my best because at least we know the defenses in both games. If it is Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, I should say, for Superflex League, since neither are top 12 option, I do have confidence in either, whoever starts, because of just how banged up this Colts defense is. They've generated pressure now, maybe due to their talent, maybe due to the injuries, at a league worst rate. And because of that, they are permitting the third most points per game to quarterbacks, including top 12 finishes to C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields, who finished as the overall QB1 that week due to his legs as well, and most recently Trevor Lawrence this past game as the QB11 of Week 5. But whether it's Will Levis or Mason Rudolph elevated for the defense, I do think their favorite target won't be Calvin Ridley, will be DeAndre Hopkins. Because we've seen now, coming off of that high ankle sprain, knee injury, however they wanted to qualify it, whatever happened to the preseason, he had been limited the first month of the year and ramped up slowly, including reaching a season-high 60% route rate in Week 4 before the team's bye. But the past 2 weeks before that bye, because he had been getting healthier, I believe, he had been lapping Calvin Ridley in target share, 21% to Ridley's 12.5%. So as the Titans come out of their bye, I think DeAndre Hopkins is the player to get higher on and someone who can outscore Calvin Ridley in fantasy football for the rest of the season. He's my favorite wide receiver, or for the Titans, I should say, in this game. Tony Pollard also someone to have confidence in as they used him as a workhorse before their bye. The other side of the ball for the Colts is where it starts getting a little more confusing because if we get Joe Flacco, although the Titans have been great against the pass this year, every advanced metric you look at, they're practically number one. I do question the talent they've faced, at least, to make them that high, since they've only played Caleb Williams in his rookie debut, Aaron Rodgers, Malik Willis, and Tyler Huntley. you could argue their numbers are boosted because they really haven't played an above-average quarterback just yet. So if that's the case, we do at least know Joe Flacco, as we talked about last week, the QB4 in 3 quarters, or QB14 in 3 quarters in week 4, and then against the Jaguars, the QB4. And if you go back to last year, including the playoffs game for the Brown, Joe Flacco has 6 consecutive games with 300 yards through the air. He's been incredible off the bench. Whereas too high safety coverage, cover 2 and cover 3 is confusing every quarterback in the league. The old school guys like Andy Dalton, Flacco come off the bench. They've seen this stuff before. They don't care at all. They let it fly. They understand the windows are on the outside. So if we get Flacco, I still like Flacco a lot. And then we also know his favorite wide receiver is Josh Downs. Josh Downs has only played 3 games in 2024 so far since he was dealing with a high ankle sprain coming out of the preseason. But in those 3 games, 27.5%, 32%, and 26.5% target shares. I do believe he can outscore Michael Pittman even for the rest of the season. So please get higher on Josh Downs, in particular in this game.
Seems like Flacco's also finding Alec Pierce, too. Alec Pierce is starting to be kind of what we thought he would be.
Alec Pierce is someone who breaks the spreadsheets because he only gets 3 targets per game, but on those 3 targets, he's always capable of 40 or 50-yard shot, like last week. Those last 2 drives for the Colts, Joe Flacco scored 14 points in a minute and a half. The drives went 42 seconds and 45 seconds because he just found Alec Pierce and Mo Alley Cox deep, because that's what he's capable of doing. He can flip the field in one throw. I do think it's a bit of a struggle, though. Speaking of the quarterbacks, Ross, we also don't know who's going to be running back at this game. We don't know if the Colts are getting Jonathan Taylor back. And although Trey Sermon got there last week with a rushing touchdown, it was kind of what you expected. Not only a tough matchup because you can't run on the Jaguars, but 3.9 yards per touch. Luck boxed into the goal line score just because a receiver fell short there. So a little bit worried about Trey Sermon. More of a outside the top 24 for me if he starts in place of Jonathan Taylor.
Let's talk Chargers, Broncos. Chargers coming off a bye, should be healthier, and the Broncos defense has pretty much been as advertised, John.
It has been, and the Chargers don't want to get into a fist fight with the Broncos secondary anyhow. They've shown us they just want to play tight defense under Jim Harbaugh and run the ball heavily. So much so that they even eliminated Gus Edwards practically in their last 2 games before the bye. It instead then became, although I understand J.K. Dobbins didn't get there in the box score for everyone in fantasy, he still out-touched Gus Edwards 35-9 over their last 2 games. So J.K. Dobbins, for the usage alone, still someone you should be very high on. And in 14-team leagues, what happens historically, I don't know, maybe you can help explain this, Ross. Like, do you know why rookies in particular, coaches always wait until after the bye week? Is there something within that 14 days of extended rest that gets them more usage? Because usually in fantasy, what we say is the post-bye rookie bump. And that's something I'm going to suggest for 12-team leagues for Kamani Vidal, their 6th-round running back, who I think could get more touches post-bye over Gus Edwards.
I think that when teams do a self-scout during the bye and they look at what they can do differently or better, that's usually when someone says, hey, you know what? I think that the rookie, I trust him now. I think he knows what he's doing. Maybe we can get him a little more playing time. That's my sense, is that when they have these self-scouting sessions, they kind of remind themselves, okay, maybe we weren't playing him as much early because we didn't have the level of trust. There's a bunch of games under our belt. He's been here now. It's time to get the rookie involved.
Okay, well, I hope the Chargers coaching staff says that about Kamani Vidal, because I do think it's time for him to get Gus Edwards touches. And if that's the case, he's someone who won't provide standalone value yet, but someone I want everyone to stash, especially in deeper 14-team leagues where waiver wires are thinner. For the Broncos offense, Bo Nix has been up and down, and it's really been matchup dependent. This is not a good matchup for him. We saw his best performances come against the Bucs and Raiders secondaries, 2 teams that just can't pressure him. Whereas the Chargers, now coming out of the bye with full strength, believe Joey Bosa will be back here, Derwin James. I am worried about Bo Nix through the air in this spot. Cortland Sutton, the only wide receiver to trust from him anyhow, especially after last week when the Broncos just healthy scratched Greg Dulcich and said, we'll play Lucas Kroll instead, just trying to get anything going going because that Sean Payton offense typically has used a receiving tight end, and Dulcich has not met that mark so far. But we have seen a bit of emergence in their backfield. It was initially looking like Tyler Bidet was going to make a terrific story for the Broncos and emerge as their leading running back. But then he suffered that scary neck injury. Sounds like he's doing well on injured reserve. And in his place the last 2 weeks, it's instead been Javonte Williams, who's at least looked, even when you watch the tape, has run harder than ever against the Jets in this last game against the Raiders, I believe the Broncos played last week. So for this matchup, although the Chargers have not allowed a running back to rush for over 75 yards just yet this year, they still leaked some production. Kareem Hunt averaged over 4.5 yards per carry. Najee Harris got to 70 yards. Chuba Hubbard averaged over 6 yards per carry in week 2. So I think the way the Broncos have to attack the Chargers defense is by leaning on Javonte Williams, who has 18 touches in back-to-back games. So that's the player I have the most confidence in for the Broncos offense.
Let's go Steelers and Raiders, John.
And for the Raiders, we saved all the offenses who we don't know the quarterback just yet for episode 2 because apparently, per head coach Antonio Pierce, it is going to be a competition throughout the week at practice. I thought we got this stuff out of the way in the preseason, but it's a competition throughout the week between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Minshew, who was benched appropriately and promptly after he sailed a wide open Brock Bowers for what would have been Brock Bowers' touchdown. And then I believe the opposing offense came down and scored the ball, so it was a 14-point swing in favor of the enemy as opposed to tying the game due to Gardner Minshew's error and throw. So I think it's going to be Aiden O'Connell when it's all said and done. And at the very least, if Davante Adams returns this game, and it sounds like he's going to play while still trying to negotiate his own trade, he did average 10.8 targets per game from O'Connell last year. The results come and go based on game script, but at least we know he's still Davante Adams. He's still capable of leading the Raiders in targets. So although Brock Bowers obviously not on the team last year, I still have confidence in Adams and Bowers no matter who is under center. For the Steelers, the Justin Fields QB1 game we discussed against the Colts defense, it also came in negative game script. It came when it was really a jailbreak situation where they had no choice but to let Justin Fields play Chicago style of ball and extend plays and go back to the playground and run around the field in order to make something happen. With the Steelers defense, against this Raiders offense that has really been struggling, I don't know if we even get that. I'm not sure we get Justin Fields being fun for fantasy football as opposed to the game manager that he's done quite well so far this year. So George Pickens also someone we previously trusted but played sparsely this past game. The rumors are, not only when you watch the tape, but I think also they were asked about it. The rumors are George Pickens was lazily going through his routes, so maybe that helps him pep up and play better this game. Maybe he gets more routes. But quite honestly, it's really just Justin Fields, Pat Freiermuth, and Najee Harris, who continues to get every single touch since Jalen Warren and Cordero Patterson remain injured and out.
I love tailgating, I love contests, and I love Smirnoff because they're giving fans in select areas of the country a chance to win the ultimate game day experience. From tickets to sideline passes and much more. Just head to WeDoGameDays.com until November 15th to enter for your chance to win. Smirnoff, We Do Game Days. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. No purchase necessary. 21 plus. Ends 11/15/24. See rules at website for participating area and other important details. Sponsored by Diageo Americas, Incorporated, New York, New York. Falcons, Panthers. Every week, John, I ask you for your value pick. And I do that because it's presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. And a little birdie told me your value pick plays for the Atlanta Falcons.
And it's a player that everyone is upset at right now in fantasy because he hasn't gotten there in a few games. Been splitting touches with Tyler Algier. But I believe Bijan Robinson is value at DraftKings this week. Yes, his target share has been cut in half from the first 2 games. A 19.5% target share coming out the gates, and the last 3 weeks, 8.3% target share. My argument for Bijan is that I don't think it matters in this spot. The Panthers have allowed at least 1 rushing touchdown to a running back in every single game this year for nearly 3 more fantasy points per game to opposing running backs than the next closest team. Bijan has also had 10 days to rest from whatever injuries that were bothering him and that short turnaround against the Bucs last Thursday. So at full strength against this banged up Panthers front 7, I believe Bijan finally answers the call as a top 5 running back. And this is the last time to buy low on him in fantasy football.
Love it. What about the other Falcons?
So we're coming off of a game that is not sustainable. Kirk Cousins has looked immensely better the past month. Don't get me wrong. We are far removed from that first Steelers game where it was just pistol offense. He couldn't even plant his foot, and TJ Watt just ate the offensive line alive. And the Falcons, because of that, the last month, have increased their pass rate in every single game. I still worry, though, about Kyle Pitts. Drake London, we're seeing them finally be intelligent, offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, with his usage and move Drake London to the slot more in every single game. And he even had immense success from the slot on Thursday night. We talked about also how well he played against the Bucs in 2023. He carried it over to last week. Darnell Mooney as well getting significantly more involved since week 4, a 25.3% target share. That's a month-long span with a 25% target share. You don't see that much in fantasy, and he may even still be available on waiver wires. But the one player I am concerned about when talking about all these options is Kyle Pitts, because it still took Kyle Pitts 500 passing yards to reach 100 receiving yards. Not only that, but he also finished 4th on the team with a 13.5% target share in a game where the entire offense blew up. So I do think it's still a sell high, be concerned about Kyle Pitts in this matchup.
What about on the other side when Carolina has the ball?
I am still personally trusting Deontay Johnson, who we have seen still lead the team in targets. Xavier Legette, who emerged against the Bengals, got banged up last week, may not play this game, something we're waiting on, but at least we know that Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard are still 2 options to trust for Carolina. I would not look too much or worry about Carolina's performance last week against, again, a Bears defense that has all my respect in the world. I think the Panthers offense typically just struggled because it was that unit on the other side of the ball. So the only 2 players right now, given that tight end Tommy Tremble and Legette are injured, are Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard to trust for the Panthers offense in this game.
Lions, Cowboys. What do you got, John?
We see the team totals on the rise and the over increasing every single day at DraftKings Sportsbook. And I think that's because the Lions could put up a 40-burger in this spot. The Cowboys defense that has no Micah Parsons, no DeMarcus Lawrence, lost more defenders as well against the Steelers on Monday Night Football. We have seen them only be tested against the limited Giant and Steelers offenses. Now they're getting a Lions offense that is at full strength since Sam Laporta has had an extended 14 days for his ankle sprain to heal. And Jameson Williams also got to heal from his injury he was dealing with before the bye. So with Ben Johnson and and the Lions coming out of their bye, I really just think against this very injured Cowboys defense, we see the Lions go absolutely nuclear in this spot. Even for someone like Jameson Williams, whose target share decreased in 4 consecutive games before the bye, I think this is a game where everyone, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Jared Goff, all of them get there. And we also know what the Cowboys have done at home historically, in their last 7 games. So on the other side of the ball for the Cowboys, we at least got to see some players step up for others. Rico Dowdle now, his share of the team's backfield touches has increased in every game this year, so much so that I doubt we see double-digit carries for Ezekiel Elliott at any point. in any game for the rest of 2024. He's really been limited. I don't know if he's been injured or maybe it's just because Rico Dowdle has played better, but Dowdle, 76% of the team's running back touches and over 100 yards from scrimmage. The best game he's had probably for his entire career so far in the NFL as a running back 3 in this game, despite the fact that you still really can't run against the Lions unless you're Ken Walker. And then through the air, although I know CeeDee Lamb, it's still been a little bit rough for him. CeeDee Lamb is still a player that established the run, the rest of season top 150 rankings. We have over Jamar Chase rest of season as a top 5 receiver, so someone we're still trusting. And also the fact that Jalen Tolbert got involved, not only to lead the team in red zone targets and end zone targets this past game, but also earning Dak Prescott's trust with that game-winning touchdown, led the team in target share as well against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. So Jalen Tolbert, I believe, enters the conversation, like Juju Smith-Schuster, as someone who should be picked up off waivers and someone that can be trusted as a wide receiver 4 or flex.
It's a good point. I was in Kansas City Monday night for the Juju breakout game. Juju and Kareem Hunt. It's like it's 2018. It's just unbelievable what Andy Reid gets done with those guys. What about Sunday Night Football? This Bengals offense has been awesome. And don't look now, but the Giants, even without Malik Neighbors, they won a game. That surprised me.
Daniel Jones played well. He did exactly what Brian Daigle asked him to do. And I do think it's a sneaky spot for Daniel Jones again. Hopefully we get Malik Neighbors back. We're still waiting to see if his concussion is lingering since we thought we'd have him back after 10 days rest, but that wasn't the case last week. And we've seen the last 4 quarterbacks to face the Bengals: Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, Andy Dalton, Lamar Jackson. They all finished as top 18 options, like top 24 players you can play in Superflex leagues. Daniels and Lamar in particular are getting there with their rushing floor, and that's important because Daniel Jones has averaged 6.5 carries this year. So I do think Daniel Jones can follow that trend and be a top 18 option for Superflex leagues regardless of Malik Neighbors' presence, although that, of course, would help. And the 2 guys who really stepped up for injuries last week in place of Devin Singletary and Neighbors were, 1, Darius Slayton. Slayton is someone also, he's one of my favorite players in the NFL because anytime, like Rashid Shaheed previously, anytime they've asked him to do more, he's always done more. He's always been really good off the bench, but for whatever reason, can't earn a role whenever, there are other players at full strength. But Darius Slayton obviously popped for over 100 yards and a touchdown, and against this Bengals secondary, I think he's another great flex play if Neighbors is out. If Neighbors is back in, you just trust him, plug him into the lineup, consider he literally leads every wide receiver in target share before injury. And for Tyrone Tracy, I think he did enough to mix in with Devin Singletary for the rest of the season and create just another one of these backfield conundrums for fantasy football that have really, we hate because we can't get a clear answer on who the lead running back is. But Tracy did exactly what he did in his lone year at the position at Purdue. At Purdue, 21% of his carries went for 10-plus yards. He's just an explosive back because he converted from wide receiver to running back for that last year in college. And then in this game against the Seahawks, 22% of his carries went for 10-plus yards. He's just an explosive player who I think they have no choice but to get him more touches, especially once they get Neighbors back because it helps open up the offense. So I am a little bit concerned about Singletary once he comes back being in a timeshare. We'll see if that's this game. For the Bengals offense, what's happened the last 2 weeks is that the target share has become more condensed as, clearly, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are healthy. Not only that, but T. Higgins has actually out-targeted Chase 24-18 in these last 2 games. So although those are the only 2 players to trust for the Bengals passing offense along with Joe Burrow right now, I think at least Higgins we should be higher on as more of a weekly top 24 option because he's carving out his own standalone role weekly alongside Chase. The backfield is also in question right now because although Rico Dowdle, and Kenneth Walker the past 2 games haven't had immense success, the Giants are still leaking big plays to opposing running backs. And Zach Moss quietly suffered a low ankle sprain this past week for the Bengals. So if Moss can't play, I think we're finally going to get the every touch role for Chase Brown that we had been waiting for. Chase Brown, a very explosive player that people drafted in rounds 8 through 10 despite not knowing if he was the Bengals starter, just because we know his upside, similar to a Jaylen Warren at full strength. So Chase Brown, not on waiver wires most likely, but if he is in 10-team leagues, I think he's legitimately, if Moss is out, Chase Brown is a top 12 running back for fantasy this week.
Lastly, we got the Bills and the Jets. Both fan bases might want to drink some Labatt Blue Lights with their fellow fans trying to live life to the power of we for different reasons. Always enjoy responsibly beer. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. What do you got on Bills Jets?
I'm going to drink all the Labatt Blue if I have to sit through this game, because although the coaching change, what I believe is an irresponsible coaching change at this time, as the Jets and Bills are fighting for first place in the division ahead of Monday night, the coaching change, I at least think, gives a little more confidence to Breece Hall. Breece Hall's target share has dipped in 4 consecutive games. It's obviously made his fantasy managers very frustrated, but the Bills' rushing defense is how you attack them. They're allowing a league-high 5.2 yards per carry. So under a new head coach, historically what we've seen is that coaches come in, establish the run. They want to be hard-nosed and make sure they have a presence and an identity at first. I think Breece Hall is the one to get fed in this game, and hopefully that allows him to become that top 5 running back that we've been waiting for since the last month. He's been splitting touches with Braylon Allen. For the Bills, I'm a little bit worried. Not sure yet if Khalil Shakir is going to play, and last week his absence was felt. Josh Allen last week against the Texans, 1 of 14 under pressure. And I think that's because Shakir was not available underneath as the team's safety valve and outlet, especially against the blitz. And against this Jets secondary that has historically given Josh Allen fits under Robert Saleh, I think it could be a game where Josh Allen struggles and the Jets get there in the end.
I'm stuffed. We're done.
Thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Feast. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcasts on your favorite platform.